Welcome to the fifth and final segment of the CPA Mentor Orientation. After having completed the first four segments, you know what it takes to get prepared for your mentoring relationship, understand what it takes to establish your relationship, know how to build upon that foundation, and recognize how to make progress in the relationship on an ongoing basis. Now you are ready to consider how to close the mentoring relationship. You will need to complete all 5 of the segments of the orientation sequentially. Together, the 5 segments will help you understand what is involved in mentoring a future CPA. You'll recall the CPA mentorship framework we previously presented to you. In this segment, we'll focus on closing your mentoring relationship during the final meeting with the future CPA, generally, once the practical experience requirements have been met. Although, in some circumstances, you might have to close the relationship prior to this point. We'll cover what to do in those scenarios as well. When starting to consider the end of the formal mentoring relationship, you and the future CPA will want to review the learning that has occurred within the relationship to date, thank each other and acknowledge your respective contributions to the relationship, and decide what comes next after the formal mentoring relationship's end. At the onset of your mentoring relationship, you and the future CPA took the time to think through and agree upon learning goals for your relationship. As a relationship comes to a close, taking a look back on the learning progress made and assessing the impact of the overall relationship are good practices. We encourage you and the future CPA to discuss progress, milestones, and the value derived from your experience. As we've already indicated in a previous segment of this orientation, the what, so what, now what model is an excellent framework for facilitating reflective mentoring conversations. We'll begin with the what. You and the future CPA might want to consider any of the following questions to facilitate a review of the key milestones of your mentoring relationship. What do you each perceive as important moments in the relationship? Which of your respective actions supported the relationship or hindered the relationship? And what have you already done differently as a result of mentoring? Next, we'll move on to the so what. You and the future CPA might want to consider any of the following questions to facilitate a review of the learning that resulted during the course of your mentoring relationship. What observations and perceptions do you each have on the progress made on the learning goals? What insights do you draw from the experience? How do you believe the relationship evolved over time? How do you believe you contributed to the relationship? How did the logistics support or hinder progress? And how did the tools and resources support your progress? Next, we'll cover the now what. You and the future CPA might want to consider any of the following questions to gain an understanding of how your experiences and insights from your mentoring relationship will impact your future behavior. What would you do differently next time? What are your thoughts about being a mentor in the future? As a mentor, consider whether this is something you would like to continue doing in the future. The future CPA can also consider becoming a mentor after certification, as this is a great way to give back. And where do you go from here? We'll cover this question in greater depth in an upcoming slide. These are just a few examples of questions that can stimulate a review of the key milestones and learning that has occurred in your mentoring relationship and its future significance. Of course, you and the future CPA are not bound by the specified questions. They are merely suggestions, and you can develop your own methods for mutually reviewing learning to date and uncovering its impact going forward. In addition to reviewing the learning that occurred with the future CPA, the profession will also seek out your feedback. As we already mentioned in the previous segment, at key milestones in the mentoring relationship, the CPA profession will liaise with you and solicit your insight regarding the mentoring program. The end of the formal mentoring relationship is one such milestone. You will be asked to complete a brief survey, in which you will offer your thoughts on how things went, whether the tools and resources on offer were useful, and how the profession could improve the program in the future. Your feedback will serve to ensure the profession's mentoring program continues to meet the needs of all parties involved. You are not limited to solely sharing your thoughts at these key check-in points. Feel free to reach out to the mentoring contact at your local, regional, or provincial professional body at any point in time. After having reviewed the learning that has taken place to date within your mentoring relationship, you and the future CPA might want to thank each other as a way to signal appreciation for your respective efforts. A good way to acknowledge each other is to share 3 things that you appreciate most about the other person. You might also want to celebrate the conclusion of your formal relationship over a coffee or a meal or any other event designed to acknowledge this important milestone. If you are in an environment where multiple mentoring relationships are coming to an end, for example, as part of a pre-approved program, you might want to mark the occasion with others in a group setting. Finally, all formal mentoring relationships have an endpoint. However, that does not mean you and the future CPA need to part ways. While not mandatory, you might wish to continue to stay in touch informally, if mutually agreeable. Deciding what comes next is entirely up to you and the future CPA. While future CPAs must complete at least 30 months of experience, or 24 in Quebec, your final meeting might come before or after that point in time, including instances where the future CPA comes into the mentoring relationship with some prior experience that has already been assessed and approved by the profession. The future CPA is experiencing challenges in fulfilling the practical experience requirements. The future CPA does not have the same continuous mentor throughout the practical experience term, or the mentoring relationship is simply not working out. Some future CPAs come to the mentoring relationship with the experience that they've gained prior to registration with the profession. In these cases, the future CPA documents this experience in the practical experience reporting tool, discusses it with the mentor, and submits it to the profession for assessment and approval. Under these circumstances, generally, your mentoring relationship will be less than 30 months in duration, or 24 in Quebec. Since the future CPA has already met some of the practical experience requirements and is not starting from scratch. However, all of the steps we discussed in this segment are still relevant to closing the relationship once you and the future CPA are ready to do so. Some future CPAs might not have the opportunity to develop the required competencies in their current roles or are experiencing other challenges in meeting the practical experience requirements. Under these circumstances, your mentoring relationship will generally be longer than 30 months in duration, or 24 in Quebec, since the future CPA will require additional time to seek out exposure to the required competencies or to meet the practical experience requirements. However, all of the steps we discussed in this segment are also still relevant to closing the relationship once you and the future CPA are ready to do so. Some future CPAs might not have the same continuous mentor throughout their entire practical experience term. There are valid reasons for changing mentors, and this practice is acceptable in some situations. For example, some pre-approved programs are rotational in nature and are structured to provide future CPAs with a different mentor in each rotation. Generally, under these circumstances, your mentoring relationship will be shorter than 30 months in duration, or 24 in Quebec. For example, it might only span the duration of the specific rotation within the pre-approved program. The steps we discussed in this segment are still relevant. However, holding a handoff meeting between the previous mentor and the new mentor is another good practice to undertake in these situations. A handoff meeting brings everyone up to speed on the progress made in the previous mentoring relationship and identifies areas of focus for the new mentoring relationship. Sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, mentoring relationships simply do not work out. This can happen as a result of logistics, differences in expectations, value conflicts, or even personalities. Ending a relationship that is not working is definitely not a sign of failure, and either party has the right to end the relationship if they find themselves in this situation. What to do if there is a poor fit resource offers mentors some tips on what to do when the mentoring relationship is not working. Additionally, The Launching Your Mentoring Relationship webinar also offers guidance on what to do when things aren't working. You can find both in the Center for Mentoring Resources. If after having reviewed these resources and following the recommended steps, you still cannot work things out, please reach out to the mentoring contact at your local, regional, or provincial body for assistance. In this segment of the CPA Mentor Orientation, we introduced you to a couple of additional resources, including the What to Do If There is a Poor Fit resource, which offers mentors some tips on what to do when the mentoring relationship is not working, and the Launching Your Mentoring Relationship webinar, which also offers guidance on what to do when things aren't working. You can find both in the Center for Mentoring Resources. You've almost finished the fifth and final segment of the CPA Mentor Orientation. Let's walk through an exercise to help you understand some of the content we've covered. Consider which of the following statements are true. A. When closing the mentoring relationship, future CPAs and their mentors should consider giving thanks to each other. B. Ending the mentoring relationship prior to 30 months is a sign of failure. C. Future CPAs must have the same mentor for the full duration of their practical experience term. D. After ending the formal mentoring relationship, the future CPA and the mentor must continue to stay in touch. Or E. None of the above. The correct answer is A. When ending the mentoring relationship, giving thanks is a great way for the mentor and the future CPA to express appreciation for their mutual efforts over the course of a relationship. B is incorrect, as a mentoring relationship might be shorter than 30 months in duration for several reasons. For example, some future CPAs might come to the relationship with some prior experience that has already been recognized by the profession. In other cases, some future CPAs might be part of a rotational pre-approved program, which requires them to change mentors in each rotation. In Quebec, due to legislative differences, the practical experience term is 24 months, and in some cases, things simply don't work out. None of these circumstances signal failure. C is incorrect, since mentoring relationships can be structured in whatever way meets the needs of the future CPA, the mentor, and, in the case of the pre-approved programs, the employer. In some cases, that might mean having the same mentor throughout the full practical experience term. In other cases, for example in rotational pre-approved programs, it might mean that the future CPA is matched with a different mentor in each rotation. And D is incorrect, since the mentor and the future CPA are not obligated to continue the mentoring relationship once the practical experience requirements are met. Choosing whether or not to stay in touch is purely at the mutual discretion of the mentor and the future CPA. This slide offers a summary of everything we've covered in all segments of the CPA Mentor Orientation. We will not review the information in detail, but please note that this summary document is available to you in the Center for Mentoring Resources. You can download a copy and use it as a quick reference guide to your mentoring relationship. Finally, we will summarize all the supporting resources that we have introduced to you during the various segments of the CPA Mentoring Orientation, including the 2-minute CPA Practical Experience Requirements Overview video, the CPA Practical Experience Requirements Fact Sheet for students and candidates, the 3-minute CPA Practical Experience Competencies Overview video, the CPA Competency Fact Sheet for students and candidates, and the PERT User Guide, which is available in the PERT itself. 5 potential relationship building exercises, the Learning Plan Worksheet, the Mentoring Agreement Worksheet, and the optional webinar that outlines what you can do to successfully establish and launch your mentoring relationship. The Framework for Telling a Good Story, the How to Ask Really Good Questions webinar, suggested questions you might find helpful when holding mentoring conversations related to each of the 5 enabling competency areas, and the Working with Diversity webinar. The Facilitating Dialogue webinar. The Feedback as a Self-Reflective Learning Process worksheet. the 6-module Essentials of Coaching webinar series, and the Mentoring Conversations video. And finally, the What to Do If There is a Poor Fit resource and the CPA Mentor Orientation Summary, which can act as a quick reference guide to your mentoring relationship. Unless otherwise specified, you can find all of these resources in the Center for Mentoring Resources. Now that you've completed the introduction and the 5 additional segments of the CPA Mentor Orientation, you are ready to proceed to the summative quiz. Upon successfully completing the quiz, you will be issued a certificate of completion, which enables you to claim 1.5 hours of verifiable continuing professional development, or CPD, credit. Remember that the quiz is not mandatory, but you must complete it if you wish to claim CPD credit for completing this orientation. Thank you for agreeing to be a mentor. You're making an important contribution to the development of future CPAs and to the future of the profession. We value your efforts. Should you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with the mentoring contact at your local, regional, or provincial professional body. Happy mentoring!